and burn.
Hey everybody. So tonight I just wanted to make a quick video discussing, or maybe this video won't be so quick. At this point I don't really know, it's been on for like 10 seconds. But I wanted to make a video just asking if whether or not you think industrial music has run its course. Like, is industrial music dead? Because it just doesn't seem to carry the same weight that it did when it started up in the 70s and then through like the Skinny Puppy 80s into the massively successful 1990s concerning the considerable mainstream success of industrial bands or industrial rock, industrial metal bands like the Nine Inch Nails, Manson, Rammstein, Orgy, Static X. These bands seem to take what the bands like Skinny Puppy were doing with it in the 80s, and they just seemed to they capitalized on that, and they found a way to break industrial music into the mainstream. But I'm not sure if industrial music ever really belonged in the mainstream in the first place. Now, that being said, I'm incredibly thankful that it ended up there, because it was so much easier for people like me to find bands like the Nine Inch Nails and Marilyn Manson because of it. It begins, let's see, when did industrial kick in? I don't know, it'd be like sometime in the 70s, thanks to like Monty Kazaza and like Throbbing Gristle, for example. Throbbing Gristle coined the term industrial music for industrial people on their 1977 debut, I think it was, the second annual report. That was where the phrase, again, industrial music for industrial people was born. And that would sort of become the call sign, you know, the siren call for the entire scene. And then, of course, Skinny Puppy in the 80s, that's when it happened for me. I was a little kid back then, but Skinny Puppy's Cleanse, Fold, Manipulate was the first CD that I ever purchased. Prior to that, I was only buying vinyl, and I think I might have owned a cassette or two at that point, but the first CD, like compact disc, was Skinny Puppy's Cleanse, Fold, Manipulate, and I got it for like $40 from Sam the Record Man in Toronto. I thought I was like the coolest kid in the world because of that. So for me, the 1980s is like the sort of the dark era of industrial music. And then the 90s brought it to the forefront, and they put it in everybody's living room, which I absolutely loved. But then it seems like after that, even with newer bands who aren't quite so new anymore, but by way of like Youth Code, Chrome Corpse, Contra Void, and even maybe sort of Project Pitchfork, even though Project Pitchfork have never really identified themselves as being an industrial band, and it's not exactly like Project Pitchfork are in any way new. I think they started up in 90 or 91, but they're still going, and I've always considered them to be, I know they're more like electro, but I can't divorce myself from thinking about Project Pitchfork, being industrial. And it just doesn't seem that the scene has what it used to have. And I'm not saying that because I'm old and I'm trying to throw back to when I was a kid and saying, oh, those were the superior days. That's not what this video is about. I don't like thinking that industrial music might be over with. And what I'm hoping will happen as the result of me putting this video on YouTube is that I get at least a handful of comments from people saying, no, you were way off. Industrial is far from dead. Yeah, Skinny Puppy was rad and the Nine Inch Nails kicked ass, but there's this band and this band and this band, and God willing, they're bands I've never heard of, and then I can check them out and fall in love with them. And I can have even more fun, newer industrial music to love. Because I love industrial music. Skinny Puppy and the Nine Inch Nails are two of like the most important bands that I have ever discovered in my entire life. Like, I mean, the Nine Inch Nails, every day is exactly the same. Jesus Christ, is that not the most lyrically accurate song of my day-to-day existence? And Skinny Puppy, they just had a way of merging their sight and sound so well, and I was so young when I got into them that their videos were so controversial because they took on topics about like things like vivisection and animal testing and shit like that. I think that's what vivisection is. Doesn't matter, I fucked up there, my apologies. But I just wonder, and I hate thinking that it's dead, because a lot of people say punk is dead, and I don't know if punk can ever die. Punk can't die as long as, well, people like me are breathing, because we're going to keep it alive as long as there's air in our lungs. And I guess you could argue the same thing about industrial music. It's just that I'm not as into industrial music as I am into like the mighty punk rock. And it just, I don't see the same constant resurgence in that scene like I do in the punk world. For better or for worse, you might hate modern punk, that's cool, whatever, it doesn't matter. It's still going, and there's still little scenes all over the world dedicated to punk rock. But I just don't know if that's happening anymore for industrial. And when I look back at like the incredibly rich history, like Wax Trax. If you don't know who Wax Trax Records is, like, my God, they're responsible for putting out VNV Nation, Frontline Assembly, Front 242, KMFDM, Meat Beat Manifesto. Did I say Frontline Assembly? If I did, I apologize. And there's a kick-ass documentary about Wax Trax Records called Industrial Accident, the story of Wax Trax Records. And it's just a shame that it seems like a lot of like younger people today may not know who Wax Trax was. And I hate thinking like that because that is sort of like another nail in the scene's coffin. And I just don't like thinking about that because industrial is so cool and it's so much fun. And whenever I think of like Skinny Puppy back when I was a kid, I still get chills because they're still a little bit scary because I'm always like 10 again. But yeah, so I think that was it. So is industrial music dead? Is it over? I don't think so. Maybe it is. I hope not. It might be for the most part. But at the end of the day, I really don't know, and that's why I chose to make this video. I apologize for it rambling now for about 6.5 minutes. I'm going to cut it there. So like always, thank you for hanging out with me for now a little over 6.5 minutes while I discussed whether or not industrial music is dead and gone. Please jump up in the comments and tell me how wrong I am, because I don't want that scene to die. You guys are amazing. Have a good night.